who launched in Singapore in 2025 packed up in April and May of this year and maybe moved to the Bay Area. The lazy version is capital is in San Francisco, so move to San Francisco and get funded. It's not really true anymore. It is not this year's anomaly. It is the structure. Southeast Asian venture has been running on one or two deals carry the whole region for at least a couple years straight. Here's the number you've seen this week, probably 5, 6 times from several different people who all copied it from the same exact report. Southeast Asia tech funding hit $7.4 billion in the first half of 2026, more than double last year. Recovery is here, the drought is over, break out the good coffee, all of that. It is true. It is also one of the most misleading true things I have read because 4.5 billion of that 7.4 went to just a single company. One, a data center operator. Take that one company out of the picture, and on the exact same set of numbers, the region did not really double. It went sideways, and depending upon how you count, actually down. And by the way, when did we actually start putting data centers into startup funding? That seems to be a new thing with the current era. So today, I actually want to talk about what a headline number hides when nobody really reads past that first line, because the story is not that Southeast Asia is back. The story is that we have gotten very good at dressing up one big check as a comeback, and the founders who were supposed to benefit from all this are quietly buying one-way tickets out. And that's an issue. Real, raw, relatable. Let's get into it. So let me give you the full picture here, because the details are where this falls apart. First half of 2026, $7.4 billion raised across Southeast Asia. Last year, same 6 months, it was 3.2 billion on the same source. So on paper, you can read 130% increase. That is the line I've seen running across my feeds and social media and WhatsApp groups. But here is what that line does not tell you. You take that 7.4 billion, 4.5 of it went to Day One. Now, Day One is a Singapore registered data center operator. They raised that across 2 Series C rounds to fund a build out. That is more than 60% of everything that flowed into the entire region in one company for concrete and cooling and racks and chips. And I want to be clear, because this is not really intended to be a slight against Day One. They did nothing wrong. Great business. Raising $4.5 billion is a very good year. The problem is not the company. The problem is that when you see the startup funding numbers that takes their balance sheets and hand it off as if it were founder momentum across the region, that starts becoming a conflated issue. Because when you pull Day One out, the region raised somewhere around 2.9 billion in 6 months. And 2.9 is less than the 3.2 that the region raised the prior year. Something like 3.2 on that. So to be honest, headline is not funding doubled, which is the stories that I had been seeing passing around my feed. Really, one landlord had great 6 months, and everything else kind of went slightly backwards. And it gets worse, because when you look at where the money sat, Singapore has been growing their share. It captured 6.9 of that 7.4, over 90%, up from, just barely above 90 previously. So this is not necessarily a Southeast Asia story. It's a data center story and a Singapore sideways. And even that is a little bit of fiction, because a lot of the physical build for these data centers is not happening in Singapore, even though that's where it's raising. It's happening in Johor across the causeway in Malaysia. But the money gets registered in Singapore because, that's where the funds are based. So the concrete goes up in Johor, the capital gets booked in Singapore, and the statistics tell you that Singapore is booming. The map and the money have stopped agreeing with each other. And a lot of these aggregate numbers just hide the underlying. Now, one thing I need you to hold on to, because you will see it floating around and it would trip people up. Around the same time, KKR and Singtel bought ST Telemedia's data center business for about, I think it was 5.2 billion. Huge number, and it is real, but that is M&A. That is one company buying another. It is not venture funding, and it is not in the 7.4. If you hear someone stack those two numbers together and tell you data centers pulled in 10 billion, they are double counting. And so we don't want to be the ones that's conflating that. So strip it all back. Again, what actually happened in the first half of 2026 is this. One data center operator raised $4.5 billion. Everything else in the region, every founder who is not building a warehouse for other people's servers, split the remaining 2.9, which is less. And here's the part that should sting as well. Fintech, payments, the thing that this region was supposed to be about, the super apps, the wallets, the great Southeast Asian consumer story we all were told for a decade. Fintech raised 685 million in the first half, 685 million. That is not a sector having a slow year. That is a sector that is basically over as the headline act. And nobody really had held the funeral. The money that flowed into the region went into concrete. Whether a founder in Kuala Lumpur or Jakarta or Ho Chi Minh City ever sees a cent of it is a completely separate question. So far, the answer is kind of no. Now, let me widen the lens, because the timing of all of this does matter as well. The same 6 months that Southeast Asia was congratulating itself on 7.4 billion, global venture funding hit a record, $510 billion in the first half of the year. A record half, driven almost entirely by the AI hype bubble. You started a company to build a product, not to run a back office. But here you are. You pay an accounting firm every month, and once a year, you get a clean set of accounts. That is compliance. It's not clarity. It will not tell you if you run out of cash in March. It will not tell you what one new hire does to your runway. And it will not answer the question every investor asks: where's this business heading? So I built your CFO, your back office in a box. Your books keeps your accounting books current, and your CFO puts your forecast forward. In one login, your actuals flowing straight into your outlook. Link your strategic initiatives, like a hire or a price change, to exactly what it does to your runway before you commit. Investor ready, operationally ready, in the currency that you work in. It is the back office I run across my own companies. Get your finances settled for your business today at yourcfo.tech. That's yourcfo.tech. Well, we can call it a bubble. We cannot call it a bubble. Let's call it a bubble. And here is the stat I cannot stop thinking about, because of that 510 billion, two companies, OpenAI and Anthropic, raised 217 billion between them. Two American AI labs pulled in 43% of all the startup funding on Earth in 6 months. Now, put the two numbers side by side. All of Southeast Asia, every founder, every fund, every sector raised 7.4. And once you take out the one data center landlord, call it 2.9, two AI labs in San Fran outraised our entire region by something like 75 to 1. Now, Southeast Asia is a nascent ecosystem. I get it. But 75 to one, two companies versus a region. So, what do you think a smart, ambitious founder in Southeast Asia is going to do in Singapore or elsewhere? What are they going to do with that information? And I will tell you what some of them are already doing. They're leaving quietly, maybe one at a time. Founders who launched in Singapore in 2025 packed up in April and May of this year and maybe moved to the Bay Area. Interface, Drift, real companies, real founders following their customers and their capital to where the customers and the capital actually are. And it is not a dramatic exodus with a press release. It's always happened, but in the current time period, it's becoming more of a steady trickle, which is worse because a trickle doesn't necessarily make the news headlines. It just quietly drains the pool. Now, here's where I want to be a little bit careful because there is a lazy version of this story, and I do not want to tell it. And the lazy version is capital is in San Francisco, so move to San Francisco and get funded. It's not really true anymore. Not even close. Because the money in the US has concentrated as well. Not just concentrated by a geography, San Francisco being very much the center. It is concentrated by story. Look inside that record US number, and 86% of it went to AI. So the same brutal filter is running there too. It is just running on a different axis. In Southeast Asia, the filter is one landlord. In the US, the filter is one narrative, and if you are not telling it, the checkbook stays shut. I hear the stories in my news feed, in the podcasts I listen to, in the conversations that I have with people there, that the days of rapid growth, which used to mean triple, triple, double, 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 the pathway to the unicorn, the old conversations that ended up happening, they say it's just not enough anymore. Now you're looking at people that are trying to raise larger sums, fewer rounds perhaps, but larger, higher valuations. But think about what that does to the bar. There used to be a very respectable way to raise. You know, as I said, you grew triple, triple, double, double, double. You built a real business that compounded. You showed durable revenue, and that was a fundable company. A clean Series A. That founder today walks into a room in San Francisco and gets a polite no. Because the person across the table is not looking for durable. They are looking for a 1000x growth story. They want the AI story that eats a category in 18 months. And a healthy business that doubles every year sounds boring next to it. So put yourself in the shoes of a founder from this region. You leave Singapore because the money is in San Francisco. You arrive and you discover the money is there, but maybe it's just not for you. It is for a very specific kind of story told at a very specific pitch, and your solid, real growing company does not clear the bar. You did not escape the filter. You just swapped a filter you understood for one that is even harder to clear. And I want to be fair because it would be easy to turn this into a loyalty test, and that is not honest. The founders who leave are not traitors to the region. They're not turning their back. They're moving towards the center of gravity. And San Francisco genuinely is the center of gravity for building right now, especially in AI. And that is real. But do not let anyone sell you the fairy tale that the flight to San Francisco, the flight to SFO ends with a term sheet. The center of gravity is also the most crowded, the most selective room on the planet. And it is only writing checks for one kind of story this year. But here is where, but here is what ties it all back. Whether the founder stays or goes, the answer is the same shape. In this region, the money went to a building, not a founder. In the US, the money is going to one narrative, not a founder. Either way, the ordinary, good, growing company, the backbone out of any real startup scene, is the thing nobody seems to be funding. We've built a region that funds the warehouse and exports the talent, and the place we export it to only wants it if it can promise a miracle. We keep clapping at demo days, and meanwhile, the sharpest people in the room are either checking one-way fares to a city that may not fund them either, or quietly wondering if the whole game has moved somewhere they cannot follow. That is not a recovery. That is a filter getting narrower on both ends of the flight. Now, fewer deals, but are they better deals? Now, when I say all this, there is a comeback I always get, and it is a fair one. So let me deal with it head on. The comeback goes like this. Kevin, deal count being down is not a bad thing. The market is matured. Investors are being disciplined. Fewer, bigger, better deals. Quality over quantity. This is healthy. And I would love to believe that. Let me show you why, but let me show you why I do not. In the first half of 2026, there were 127 funding rounds across the region. Last year, same period, 153. So yes, fewer deals, but look at where the money inside those deals went. 6 billion of the 7.4 went into just 12 rounds. 12 rounds of $100 million or more. 12 rounds took 6 billion. The other 115 rounds, everything else, every seed check, every Series A, every founder who is not raising 9 figures, split roughly 1.4 billion between them. That doesn't really strike as discipline. Discipline is when investors look at 100 good companies and carefully back the best 30. This is 100 companies looking up at 12 giants, eating almost everything and scrapping over the crumbs that fall off the table. When the top 12 deals take 80% of the capital, that doesn't necessarily come off as purely mature market. That is a bare cupboard with one very full shelf. And before anyone tells me last year was some golden baseline we have fallen from, no, last year was the same shape. In the first half of 2025, it was fintech numbers that were carried by, the fintech numbers were carried by 3 deals. 3. They made up more than half of all fintech funding in the region, and Singapore, again, took 90+% of the pie back then as well. So this is the part I want to land. The concentration is not new. It is not a one-off. It is not this year's anomaly. It is the structure. Southeast Asian venture has been running on 1 or 2 deals carry the whole region for at least a couple years straight. The only thing that changed in 2026 is that the one deal got bigger. So the number got louder. And the lie, it just got easier to tell. Now, I want to be clear about what this episode is and what it is not as we try and wrap this up. This is not doom. I am not telling you the region is dead or that nobody should build here or that we should all give up and move to California. Plenty of good companies are being built in this region right now, quietly with real revenue, and they deserve better than to be background noise behind data center headlines. And be honest with you, I don't even know why data centers are included in startup numbers. What I'm asking for is honesty about the number, to not be looking at 7.4 as if it were a sign of health in the region, because it is not. It is the balance sheet of one landlord plus a rounding error for everyone else. If you want to know how Southeast Asia is actually doing, do not look at the top deal. Look at the deal number 3 and deal number 50 and deal number 127. Look at whether a seed stage founder in Kuala Lumpur can raise a real round without having to move to Singapore first. Look at whether the best people are staying or whether they're leaving. Right now, On the honest read, the top of the market is a landlord. The middle is thin, and the sharpest founders are heading to the airport. Until the number without the landlord starts going up, we are not narrating a recovery. We're narrating a story we'd like to be true. That is the show. Real, raw, relatable. If this one annoyed you, good. That means you were paying attention. Tell me where I'm wrong. I read every reply. See you next week. And that does it for this episode of Sea of Startups. If you've enjoyed what you've been listening to, please give it a like, give it a review, subscribe to our channel. A little bit of feedback goes a long way in allowing us to keep on putting out these kind of episodes.